Well, the minister's sectoral briefing entered day 2 with more promises from the Tinubu cabinet. Power Minister Adeniyi announced a power supply capacity of 5,000 megawatts, and that's up from about 4,000 he met when he assumed office. Housing Minister Amadi unveiled a pipeline yearly target of 50,000 affordable housing units. And Coordinating Minister of Health, Professor Adeniyi, said 10 health infrastructure have been commissioned. Arise correspondent Bengashiru reports.
The one-year anniversary of this government.
It's day 2 of the minister's sectoral briefing. What initially appeared a mere routine gets on a horsewind, with more ministers coming to tell Nigerians what they have been able to achieve since they were appointed about 9 months ago. A second look captures what seemed a race for their political survival as the Minister of Housing, Adeniyi, opens the floor with his long defense on how the federal government is trying to bridge the housing deficit in the country with a target of providing Nigerians 50,000 decent and affordable housing units annually.
The first is the renewed hope cities and estates. We have planned and commenced the actualization of the renewed hope cities and estates development program, which we quite well know that Mr. President launched early this year. He launched the renewed hope estate and cities program, and he did a groundbreaking on the same day of 3,112 housing units for a start. So under phase 1, we plan to deliver a total of 20,000 housing units across the Nigeria, with both budgetary allocation of the 20,000 housing units and 30,000 additional under the PPP, public-private partnerships.
Then the Coordinating Minister of Health, Professor Adeniyi, speaks of enrollment of additional 40,000 health workers and creation of 10 critical health infrastructure across the country.
Very soon, I'm sure you'll see the groundbreaking ceremony of 10 healthcare infrastructure projects across the 6 geopolitical zones. It's not planning, it's now groundbreaking. And this is very important. It's 8 diagnostic centers and 2 oncology centers, even before the 6 that we mentioned.
The issue of power is one thing that draws very deep emotions from Nigerians. As the Minister of Power, Adeniyi, announced a power generation and distribution capacity of 5,023 megawatts from about 4,000 megawatts before assumption of office, while he also announced $750 million investment through World Bank loan for renewable energy scale-up plan.
5,000 megawatts of power was achieved in May 2024. For the first time in 3 years, we just got another approval for 750 million facilities from the World Bank, which means we are going to achieve these are targets. So the one-year anniversary of this government.
Day of reckoning beckons for Tinubu's ministers as the draws close to 1 year in office. Perhaps it's a race to secure their jobs, but would Mr. President be weeding out the underperforming ministers, or would it be just business as usual or a jamboree? But whatever the case is, posterity would preserve a place for Nigerians in this renaissance. From the National Press Center, Bengashiru, Arise News.
$1 million questions asked by Bengashiru there. Well, with me in the studio, the current affairs analyst and dean of the postgraduate school at Bayes University, Professor Adeniyi. He's with me, of course, in our off-site studio. And right here in the studio with me is Dr. Sam Amadi, Director, Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight tonight. Let me start with you, Prof, in the offsite studio. Let's start with power. I mean, the creator started by saying, let there be light. Without electricity, without power, every other thing you want to discuss really is a non-starter. So we're hearing from the Minister of Power, Adeniyi Adelabu. He's saying, look, for the first time in 3 years, Nigeria has achieved a peak of 5,000 megawatts. What do you make of that? And, you know, what he's ruled out, solar power, it's still within the realms of a plan, and the $750 million World Bank facility that he spoke about there. Let's get your thoughts first.
All right, thanks, Ngozi, for having me, and good evening, viewers. It's okay that we're having the ministers, rendering account of their stewardship in the last 1 year. But it's also important that, accounts that will be rendered, should actually be accounts, that will come with substance, where our celebration can actually be consequential. For me, I don't think I'm too fast, by the delivery with respect to the power sector. For many years, we've talked about 4,000 megawatts for a nation of nearly 200 million people, and even the megawatts sometimes plummates, to far less than the 4,000. And of course, if for a long time we've been struggling with 4,000, adding another 1,000, shouldn't be something that we should be celebrating, really. It should be a time for more introspection to see how we can propel ourselves far beyond that, realizing that even organizations, even agencies in other parts of the world, Heathrow, for instance, I'm aware, generates far in excess of 40,000 megawatts, and of course, South Africa, another country on the African continent, generate far in excess of that, about 44,000 or so megawatt, for their own people. So what's that question that we've not been able to answer with respect to the power question? And of course, if you're talking about additional 1,000 megawatt, then what about distribution? Is it just about generation? Aren't we going to be concerned about distribution? Distribution is another being as well. And of course, what about acquisition? The ability of the consumers, of the people, to acquire it, as the case could be, in view of the recent hike in the price, of electricity, which is still very controversial. Remember the question of people in Band A, still a very controversial issue, still triggering labor union, the civil society, and the general mass of the people, further to the liberalization of the economy through the floating of the naira, the removal of subsidy, all these things are adding up. Yeah. Like I said, it is important for us to have accounts being rendered, but the way we render it should also matter, so it won't appear as if the people are being taken for a ride, where just something that should just be routine, is rather being celebrated. This is not to say that some ministers have not done well. Some have actually done well from what we have had yesterday, and from what I think we're going to have, as the days roll by, but where ministers, fall short of expectations, we need to point this out too. And maybe I should also mention that sometimes it may not be the fault of these individuals, these persons as ministers. It could be a problem with the system. But in that case too, I think there should be a way in which the people or the ministers or the person in charge of that system should be circumspect, therefore should put things properly in context, right. So that we will not be dancing, where the drum is yet to be beaten, as the case could be.
That's a very interesting way of putting it, dancing when the drum is yet to be beaten. And as far as the power sector is concerned, it doesn't seem like the drum is beating yet. Dr. Sam Amadi, you of all people should know the workings within the power sector, because you've been a player and you understand the workings of that sector. Why exactly has Nigeria not been able to go beyond this 5,000 that the minister seems so proud of? He's saying, look, on the generation front, distribution, transmission is done very well with 5,000 megawatts. And on the issue of electricity tariff for Band A, he says, look, it's temporary pain. There's no gain without pain. And that's what Nigeria is going through now. Compares it with the telcos, when it used to be expensive, but things improved over time. Your thoughts?
First, I don't think these Concord briefings useful. Let me be straightforward with you. You see, we run a presidential system of government, and the president is chief executive. So you should be briefing the president, or the president's staffers to assess whether you've done the job. So this is more like political campaign for Coach, so there's no rigor in it. But so for me, I don't see it as serious. I mean, a 1 year review should happen with president or his staffers assessing, or a focus group of those who know, who can ask questions. But again, let's get to the claims. I think the minister didn't impress me at all, because he went to talk about routine things, mundane things. Part of the achievement was the president signed Electricity Act. I mean, president has to sign a law that has been, enacted for him passed by the National Assembly. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, but it is an achievement that he signed.
No, it's not an achievement to sign. Is he going to veto Electricity Act? It has no political implication. It's not an assignment. I mean, the law matured at his presence. Let's be very serious here. He talked about the 5,000 megawatts. He said, that is a peak. When I was NEC chairman, when I left in December 2015, we peaked at 4,800 in a particular day.
And that was
it drops. See,
how far back?
It drops. And the Arise News correspondent, Gwenga, was very smart. He said, look, we know that rainy season we peak because the hydros come back to life. So this is like, by the time you move across the seasonal thing, you get back to where we are. So the truth is, for now, there's no major improvement at all in the value chain. Yes, even before this government came, we were about probably we could do about 13,000 in terms of capacity. But in terms of availability, we don't even have gas for more than 5,000, 4,000. So clearly, we don't have much achievement to write home. Again, you talked about this loan. I mean, it's nice that loan, the World Bank always, this has been on.
$750 million.
Yes, under Buhari and matures now. So the question is, what are we going to use with that? How are we going to use that to decentralize power? Some states, Edo, others who are coming up, Enugu, they can leverage on that. So that's a good event. I don't call it achievement. This is like a good opportunity. The real achievement is how we use it to drive up capability. So look, when you're talking about what we have achieved, we are looking at milestones that tell a story around effectiveness, managerial effectiveness. We're not looking at happenstances. We're looking at fortune. I mean, so if the US said, look, we're going to do $500 million to Africa, and then Nigeria gets maybe $100 million, that's not an achievement. If it's achievement, it's to the foreign minister, by the way, probably who did the legwork. So we're not seeing much in that. Now, issue about tariff, you talked about. Yes, the tariffs need to go up. But the question is how they go up. We've seen a blundering. First, look at it this way. There are many courts, the House of Assembly, the National Assembly, the House of Reps, the Senate, have all said the procedure was chaotic, was even irregular, violated the Constitution. And I've argued that the way they did it was actually not the way to do the proper time. So, in a sense, I would say that this administration has not put his foot right in matter of managing the electricity sector. What I look in terms of policies and reversals, this minister says no longer don't give regulatory powers to states. Then he said, okay, can give. Now look at the chaos around that, and the ministry ought to set up a structure that should guide states in implementing the act. So for me, I will give a failing grade, maybe a 20%.
Very poor.
Very, very
poor.
All
right, let's hear some more from the Minister of Power, Adeniyi Adelabu.
Let me say that 5,000 megawatts of power was achieved in May 2024. For the first time in 3 years, exactly 3rd of May 2024, we generated, transmitted, and distributed 5,003.45 megawatts of power. We are proposing inclusion of 3,000 utility scale solar power source within the next 24 months to actually change the mix of our energy generation. We just got another approval for 750 million facilities from the World Bank, which means we are going to achieve this our target.
Dr. Sam Amadi, Prof. Biodun Adeniyi, we could spend all of 2 hours talking about the power sector, and I doubt very much if we can get to the bottom of why Nigeria has not been able to make much progress in the power sector. Let's go to the health sector. We heard from the Minister, Ali Pate, well-respected global figure in the health sector. But let's still, let's hear from him first before we go into that conversation.
Very soon, I'm sure you'll see the groundbreaking ceremony of 10 healthcare infrastructure projects across the 6 geopolitical zones. It's not planning, it's now groundbreaking. And this is very important. It's 8 diagnostic centers and 2 oncology centers, even before the 6 that we mentioned. There is 260 billion naira sitting right now at the state level, all the states of the federation. Those have been mobilized for the revitalization of the primary healthcare centers.
Right, gentlemen, you heard from the Health Minister, Ali Pate, there. Any surprises? I mean, because when you hear him say, look, it's not a projection, it's not a plan, it's ongoing already. The groundbreaking has happened, 10 healthcare infrastructural projects, 8 diagnostic centers, and on and on. And he actually said in his presentation that President Tinubu is taking significant steps to revolutionize Nigeria's health sector. In the last they came on board about 9 or 10 months ago. What's your assessment of the health minister and his presentation, Dr. Sam Amadi?
I think the health minister is coherent. I mean, I've listened to him in another economic forum. He's clear-minded. He comes with a coherent plan, and this is what it should be. I mean, look, don't forget even the groundbreaking. The understanding about policy. Issues of revitalizing primary health centers across the state shows a plan that addresses the real diagnostics about deficits in terms of health outcome. So I sign off with the health minister. I think the plans can post some success. By the way, health is not about bricks and building.
Right.
Health is also about diagnosis, about provision, about primary level interventions. And so I think the party understands what to do, and they are stepping in a coherent manner. I didn't say that in power. I think this is a good outcome for me.
I'm sure if I asked you, as far as deciding which ministers should go and which ones should stay, you already have that somewhere at the back of your mind. But I'm not going to ask that question.
Should stay.
I will not ask that question at this point. Prof, let me bring this to you. I mean, one of the exciting points made by the health minister during his presentation said, look, local pharmaceutical manufacturing is going to be a major focus. As a matter of fact, he said a Brazilian entity is investing $240 million, for a manufacturing plant in Lagos, and there'll be training also for healthcare workers, as well as he actually says there's a surge in the returning or coming back home of diaspora and healthcare professionals abroad. They're coming back. Apparently something is attracting them back home. Are you impressed?
Well, the health sector is a very delicate sector, a very tricky one, and of course, that's a sector where we need a lot of expertise in terms of management. It's also a sector where you need, in terms of service delivery, you need a good balance between the tangible and the intangible. Tangible, you're talking about physical infrastructure, you're talking about facilities, and of course, the intangibles, you're talking about the services provided and the quality of those who are going to provide the service. What confidence, level of confidence are we engendering in the health sector? How much are we doing to discourage people from seeking health care abroad? So how do we build, galvanize, enhance the level of confidence in our own system, in our own climate, so that people can trust our delivery system? Yes, it's okay if, like the minister said, that some facilities are going to be commissioned, there'll be a groundbreaking. It's fine, that's all right. But the other aspect of it is, what are we doing, to prevent, the rush of our experts, outside the shores of this country? Why are they externalizing their hope? Why are Nigerian universities training medical practitioners only for foreign hospitals? How much hope can we build, in their future? How do we make them have trust in our own system for the benefit of our own people who are every day yearning for good healthcare delivery? I think think we need to also be concerned about striking that balance. It's fine if we are concerned about facilities, infrastructure, but it's not less salutary if we are also concerned, about the level of trust that we can engender in our system. But I also want to be confident in the ability of the minister. He's got a very fantastic pedigree, from where he was coming from, and of course he's got multilateral support. We are seeing it happening. He just alluded to that as well. So we just want to believe that he can build on all those, to give us the best, of his service, at the end of the day. But overall, Ngozi, I think rather than us having this disparate framework, it's also okay if we can probably tell the Tinubu administration to be concerned about developing or building a definite kind of ideology of development, an ideology, a framework that will guide the policies, directions, and ideas, and notions of his ministers, his lieutenants, and all of them, so that they can work within those framework far beyond, the renewed hope agenda, which people can easily attribute to be a political sing-song. We need something that is much more than a political sing-song, to something that looks like a deep-seated ideological framework that will guide growth and development within the framework, within the time Nigerians have entrusted their confidence in him to lead them as president.
Prof, thank you very much for that submission. Dr. Sam Amadi, I guess what Prof is saying, there's a need for a matrix that you can use in measuring performance, not just the ministers, telling the world what they've achieved, but the government itself should be able to say, look, this is the barest minimum that we expect from the cabinet, because that reflects on the performance, overall performance of the government. You have one more thing to say about health before we move on to housing.
I think on the ideology thing, that's why I said, look, this is fruitless. You need to be talking to the president and his minders who have a blueprint. This is ideology, this is the direction we're going to development. And so then we assess whether these things are coherent with the grand plan. So that's why I said this is about the president and staffers, not for us. But again, on the health, I think the good thing about the health sector is, look, NAFDAC has been a star performer in that platform, because they're able to do a lot to improve local manufacturing of drugs. They are doing effective. They're working with the minister well to control drug,
fake drugs
and all that. And I think drug inflation is one aspect that they should take seriously. The health component, the health crisis in Nigeria, with inflation going on, with the economic crisis, the challenge will be at the level of whether people who are sick or can purchase the drugs they need. So
the cost of antibiotics going through
drugs
the roof and what
for those who are.
So that's why I said I'm excited that local pharmaceutical manufacturing,
and they are doing well. NAFDAC is star performer. Great job they are doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's come to housing. Of course, of the basic needs of man, housing takes a very prominent position there. Well, you heard from Housing Minister Ahmed Dangiwa. Let's hear from him and hear what he had to say.
The first is the renewed hope cities and estates. We have planned and commenced the actualization of the renewed hope cities and estates development program, which we quite well know that Mr. President launched early this year. He launched the Renewed Hope Estate and Cities program, and he did a groundbreaking on the same day of 3,112 housing units for a start. So under phase 1, we plan to deliver a total of 20,000 housing units across the Nigeria, with both budgetary allocation of the 20,000 housing units and 30,000 additional under the PPP, public-private partnerships.
Well, you heard from the Minister of Housing there. To some, the name might not exactly be familiar, and that in itself is telling. Ahmed Dangiwa. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, let me start with you. You heard him there talking about renewed hope and estates and developments. 3,112 housing units for a start, and there's a plan. You heard the minister really more or less talking about plans and not necessarily what has been achieved in the last 1 year in the housing sector. You want to speak to that?
Well, of course, you have underscored it. There's a difference between plan, and of course, implementation. Oftentimes, we have made a point that the bane of our development is one of implementation. We're never short with policies, but execution remains the problem. Now, in this circumstance, we can only hope that that ministry, they will match their words with action, But I'm also aware that the ministry has quite a number of agencies, including the federal, notably the Federal Housing Authority. And in recent times, we have seen the new energy being injected into the achievement of the mandate of that agency. If that continues, and of course, if you add that to the pronouncement of the minister, then of course we can be seeing that in the near future, in the next 1 or 2 years, we'll actually see facts on the ground to justify the fact that there is implementation, that there is execution. And oftentimes I also wonder why administrations have often failed to take housing, to prioritize housing, considering how it can be very efficient, how it can be very productive in helping them, leave legacies, We remember with fondly the Jakande estate in Lagos. We remember the Shehu Shagari estate, those days. And from then on, I actually doubt if we have, in recent history, I doubt if we have any memory of recent housing projects, in Nigeria, other than, the handing, the fact that we have handed this over to the private sector most of the time. And of course, you know what it is, when it is private sector led, and we have to be careful with this, because the mass of the country, of the population is still very poor. And of course, when it comes to profit making, it is still largely in the hands of individuals, considering a putative capitalist system. So we need a lot more responsiveness on the part of government, to assist the people, through affordable housing, like they said they are going to do, if implementation is going to be speak and span. But I think the plan looks good, if it is backed by determination. And what we need to do in circumstances is just to keep an eye on how they perform going down the line, considering the effort of the Federal Housing Authority. And of course, if you match that, like I said, with the ministry and some other agencies under that ministry, we could probably just believe that there's going to be silver lining, there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, as the case could be.
Very hopeful there. And considering too, so much has been said about Nigeria's housing deficit. That's 17 million that's always been touted for it's about, there you go, almost 30 million as at 2024. With this 50,000 decent and affordable housing units plan every year, how soon can we even begin to scratch the surface? Dr. Sam Amadi, during Tinubu, then candidate Tinubu's campaigns, he talked a lot about mortgage, that there's a need for Nigerians to have access to, mortgage for housing, and to make it easier for Nigerians to, get housing. And of course, early this year, he unveiled the renewed hope estates, or cities, if you like, in the Kasana area here in Abuja. Let's talk about housing.
I think first, tokenism. 30, 20, 5,000, 20,000, when you're talking about now maybe 30, as at 2022, we're talking about 28 million deficit of housing units that are built up over 1.5 decades. Now, you look at how to address this problem. Yeah. So first, you're going to talk in terms of policy. And that's why candidate Tinubu's plan is better than President Tinubu's delivery. It was a social...
But it's just 1 year, let's be fair.
No, plan.
It's 1 year.
Hold on.
Right.
My assessment of a project is not delivery.
Right.
What's the plan in terms of, for example, what's the diagnosis of the problem of deficit? First is financing. 2 is housing deficit. 3 is commerciality. For example, there are many houses in Abuja here that are empty because affordable. I listened to the debate interview with Ben Carson, who was housing minister. And they talk about the there are many homeless people in America. And that diagnosis was that, look, if you get these houses and the price is affordable, affordability is critical.
Right.
So we want to see the government come up with a new plan, policy that looks at, yes, we want to use private sector to drive it. But what are the policy, fiscal supports that will drive this investment, massive investment in housing unit. And I'll give you an example. When I was chief executive of NEC, everybody in NEC today has a house. I would put about 2 billion into a housing with mortgage of 1% declining interest. And then Senate called me and said, how can you put 2 billion for housing?
2 billion naira?
2 billion naira for them. And I argued that, look, housing is a critical human right. 1. 2, it's a facility for productivity. 3rd, the housing industry with all the value chain can be the spur for to grow the economy. Absolutely. It can actually help to reinflate the economy. So I think this is an area that government can put in more money, crowd in private sector, but you have to have an intelligent fiscal plan. So what I'm seeing, what is missing here, President flag off 2,000 houses in the Kasana, that's not the plan. You should have a new thinking around the market and around fiscal stimulus that can crowd in funds and drive portable. Again, look at the housing industry. Look at the housing ecology, the environment, the materials for housing. Right. How are we going to reshape how we build? Because it seems to be that our buildings are more expensive and costly. Environmentally, we can actually have cheaper houses that are durable, affordable, and meet the UN Habitat criteria. So there's now creative thinking around how do we change how we build? How do we change how we finance building? And how do we change how we price building so that it be affordable, it be available and sustainable?
Maybe you should throw in bricks in there, brick housing.
That's the point. So for example, I look at the housing, we can actually build cheaper.
Absolutely.
Look at the US, look at people using woods. Cheaper places is sustainable. We have a good environment. We don't have flood. We don't have hurricanes. So why are we building at very high cost? What is the markup? So you spend billions and then you develop few houses. So these are the things that a new policy that's really policy. So the issue about
Nigeria
scorecard,
really achieve low-cost housing? This is a question for both of you in 1 minute each, if you can.
For me,
can we really achieve it?
Yes, I think we can achieve low cost.
What will it take?
3 things are going to do: drive down the cost of materials. That's 1. Expand, credit support for the private sector, and then regulate price for finished product.
All right, that's a good place to leave it. I was going to get Professor Adeniyi's weigh in on that, but it's fine. That's all the time we have for this discussion. Of course, we'll be keeping an eye on the ministers, especially as they unfold for the next year what they have for Nigerians.